Today on Fortnite, I got second place. I was so close.
Mom, will you get me a snack?
Mom! It's time for adult conversation. With me, your host, Brandy Ferner. Hello, Adult Conversation podcast listeners. In today's episode, I am talking to fellow Idea Woman, writer and podcaster Zibby Owens about our shared interest in normalizing the challenges of mom life. We also discuss how the pandemic has taught us to let go of perfectionism and how there are some things we don't want to go back to normal. And the universe continues to teach me about imperfection as my mic betrayed me for the last time. In addition to parenting talk about siblings with big age gaps, from Shopkins to vaping, and the illusion of balancing everything as a mom, Zibby also shares about some of her favorite podcast interviews with A-listers such as Alicia Keys and Anne Lamott. On to the show. Joining us on the podcast today is Zibby Owens. Zibby hosts a super successful podcast with about 1 million downloads called Moms Don't Have Time to Read, on which she's interviewed authors such as Anne Lamott, Glennon Doyle, Alicia Keys, and more, which we'll get to. Zibby is also a writer herself and has written for or been featured in the New York Times, the Washington Post, Good Morning America, and Real Simple, to name a few. She is also a mother of 4 who recently rediscovered the fire that had been stamped out of her. More on that later. Welcome to the podcast, Zibby.
Thank you. Thanks for the intro.
Yes. We met when I found your podcast, and the title alone, Moms Don't Have Time to Read, let me know that you were my people. You were so sweet to read my book and have me on your show, and also to interview me on your Instagram Live when my book came out. And the further I get into this author journey, the more I meet these truly lovely, supportive, interesting people like you. So I think I've told you this, but the way I feel about you is the way that friends have told me they feel about me, which is, how does she do all that she does? She has to be on meth. So I want to talk about this and how you sustain all you do while also parenting 4 kids. But first, what do the listeners need to know about you?
When I was 25 years old, I lost 4 people who were super close to me within a year, and my life has never been the same since.
Oh, wow. What?
How was that?
Yeah. Okay. So my question is how specifically, how did that change you? What was different in your life from that moment on? How did you live differently?
I've lived differently ever since. I think anybody who really comes to terms with the fact that life can change from one minute to the next has like a different sort of point of view on the whole thing. The only upside I can see in having something traumatic happen, to be honest.
Right.
You know, my best friend and college roommate and my roommate after college died on 9/11, like 2 weeks after I went to business school. And then that year, my grandfathers died, my stepbrother died, my best friend from high school committed suicide. It was like the worst year of my life. And I know it was pretty bad. But I went into business school thinking that even though I love to write and those were, my passions were all about like learning more about people and understanding behavior and all this stuff and psychology and whatever, I was going to pursue marketing and this was going to be my thing. And I was going to just follow the corporate trajectory and, try to rise through the ranks of consumer products marketing and whatever else. And I quickly realized that I was not going to do that. And if I was going to die at my desk, I better be doing something that brought my whole self to whatever I was doing. So I changed everything. And that's how I live now.
Holy shit. Okay, that is like a perfect segue to my first question, because there's so much I want to pick your brain about, but this, I think, relates to that. And maybe I would imagine there's a connection here, but I wanted to start with this fire being stamped out of you. I read a recent article of yours and you said, quote, "The fire inside me, what made me me, had been stamped out after a decade of decline." So will you tell us more about that? And is there a relationship between remembering those events and maybe remembering the change that it spurred in your life? Are those things related? Will you tell us more about that?
Sure. Yeah, it's all of a piece. It's all related. That was in reference to the life I was living and before I got divorced. And I won't say it was all about my marriage, but it was about who I had become myself. Not to blame my ex-husband in any way, but just the
Yeah.
way that I had let life unfold and the way I had handled things and the things that I really cared about that I had allowed to let slip.
Like, what were some of those things? Is it like motherhood stuff?
Yeah, motherhood stuff. I mean, I stayed at home, and this was my decision, right? Like, I stayed
I
at
hear
home.
you. I hear you.
You
Yeah.
know, it's
Yep.
not like anyone chained me to the crib or anything, but
Yeah.
I had twins, and it was a really difficult pregnancy, and I was worried the whole time. And sometimes I think I never stopped. I've never stopped worrying about my twins, but once I had them, I was like, I'm not going far, I'm not leaving their side essentially for a while. So I stopped everything and I just kind of stared at them all day. And,
Right.
I mean, not really. It was very, very busy, of course. And I was still emailing and I was still like doing some stuff that was important to me, like staying on boards in the community and that type of stuff. But in terms of like even writing or expressing myself or seeing friends or pursuing all my sort of entrepreneurial dreams and all these other things that had been percolating, I just sort of came to a screeching halt and was like, no, now I'm throwing myself into this. And I remember after about 5 years, I finally got involved in this startup. They had come to me for advice on being a mom. It was a daily deal site for mom, kind of like a Groupon for moms. It was called Gaggle of Chicks. And I remember being like, wait, I don't want you to interview me as a mom. I want to like actually run this business and do this and build it and grow it and whatever. So I joined the team for a little bit part-time. And I remember literally like jumping up and down in my bedroom being like, yes, I'm going to do something again.
Yes.
Not that I didn't love being with my kids and I adore them, but and I've since had 2 more since then. But it was just like it was a lot, and it wasn't the ideal environment for all of me to come through. And maybe that's just the time, and maybe that's okay, and maybe we all have to go through times like that. But anyway, now I'm back.
No, yeah, that's such a great point that you make, and a question you and I think are similar. And this is maybe that way of being that we have, where we're interested in so many things. And I think we've talked about this, that like I get ideas, I think similar to you, and then I want to do them, and then I do them.
Yes.
And that's a different, and I've talked about this on the podcast before, that's a different kind of personality. And I think having that personality of having tons of ideas, but then also having the motivation to do them is a challenge with motherhood. And because you've read my book, the question about how do we find our value, our identity, how do we not lose ourselves? And when we have these other passions, how do we balance that? And then the guilt that we have for thinking, I want more than this.
Right.
And so your question of like, maybe for a certain amount of time, we have to lose that spark, or, we have to kind of take a side route a little bit. But I constantly wonder, do we? And there's no right answer to that, but I hear you, and I'm on the same page as you as wondering those things, but still feeling really pulled to do things outside of motherhood.
Yeah. And that's, I think, why I related to your book so well. Like, that's why I told you when I interviewed, like I was like, dog earing every page, like, yes, that too.
Yeah, I think because we are so similar, and the character in there that represents some of those things, some of those passions, and wanting to get to them and wondering why, like, because it feels like either way, and there's a chapter that's called All Roads Suck Balls. And that mantra is so resonant right now, because, and especially in motherhood, it's like, well, if I stay with my kids all day and don't do something else, then I'm not living my full self. But then if I go do something else, well, then I feel like I'm not being a good mother or doing, showing up in that way. And so there's this like elusive place where we win. And I don't know that I've figured it out. I was actually talking to a friend last night where we were laughing about how I go through these swings where I'm like, okay, I need to do something outside of motherhood. So then I go full bore, but then it's too much to juggle motherhood and
I know. That's so the problem.
And then I swing all the way back to like, I just want to do nothing, but then I'm miserable. And so my friend and I were like, why can't I find anywhere in the middle? Like I just keep swinging back and forth. So,
oh my God, I had the worst thing happen to me this week. My
no.
daughter, I was reading this book. I mean, not really, but I was reading a children's book to my kids called Saturday. And it's about this mother who has to work all the time, but like she gets her Saturdays off. And so that she plans this whole big day with her daughter, and the daughter's so excited. And then like everything goes wrong on the day. But in the beginning of the book, it was like, you know, Saturday, I'm so excited to be with mama because mama has to work on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, but Saturday she can be with me. And I was thinking to myself as I read that, gosh, that's really hard. That mom must have a really hard time being away from her kids for that long. I mean, that's tough. I was feeling really sorry for the mom. And then my daughter goes to me, but you work every day.
Oh.
And I just looked at her. Looked at her. She's like, I mean, you know, you're home and you're with us and all the rest. But I was like, oh my gosh, don't even.
See, but this is the thing where you like wonder, I sometimes look at my kids and I'm like, I wonder what they see, because I'm, you know, I'll do a couple hours of work a day or something, but I'm not working like nonstop all day. And so, and I'm in and out doing stuff for them. But I feel like if I work at all during a day, to them, I'm like, I'm working all day.
Totally. Yes.
So yeah,
totally
their perception.
I know. I'm like, I was doing your school forms. That wasn't fun. That's like, I did that from 6 to 7:30 in the morning so that I could hang out with you after.
Right.
Anyway.
Yeah. So how did your Moms Don't Have Time to Read podcast come about? What was your intention for it? What did it offer you that you really needed? And also, how did you find the time to do it?
Oh my gosh, it was such a fluke that I even started this podcast and that my life has gone in this direction. I had been writing a bunch of parenting essays, which I started doing after my divorce. And I had all this time suddenly, right, with my kids at their dad's house to finally like find my voice again and all the rest. So I started writing more on those weekends. And one of the first essays I wrote, I put up on HuffPost, and like within a few days, it had 65,000 views or something like that. And it was all about exactly, to be honest, Brandy, what we're talking about now, which is how the logistics of motherhood give you very little time to even spend time with your kids. And it was called A Mother's Right to Sanity. Anyway, I started doing that. Then I wrote like all these other ones. And my husband said to me one night, I got remarried. He wasn't my husband at the time, but he said, you should make all these into a book, all these essays. And I was like, ugh, moms don't have time to read books. And then I was like, oh, that's so funny. I'll make that the title of my book. So I wrote a book proposal for it. And I talked to a bunch of friends who were in the publishing world, all of whom said, no one wants to read a book of parenting essays. Like those don't sell. Essay collections don't sell. Books about parenting, unless you're an expert, like a psychologist or some sort of expert, or you have a major platform, your book, no one wants to read your book on your experience with motherhood. And you have none of that. Right. I mean, I wasn't on social media. I had been freelancing for, at that point, really like 20 years essentially, but it didn't matter. Like none of that mattered. Yeah. And so I went to a coffee with an author friend, and she said, well, you know what you should really do? You should start a podcast. And I was like, what's a podcast? This is almost 3 years ago. And she's like, no, it would be great. And I was like, what would it even be about? So I kind of stored that away in the back of my mind. And then I thought, well, you know, I'm always forwarding essays to people and ripping them out of the papers and sending them and recommending books and all the rest. I was like, well, maybe I could do a podcast where I read those essays out loud so that my friends could hear them, and maybe other people would want to hear them. And maybe I could read some of my own essays occasionally, and who knows? So then I found out that, you know, that was illegal. I couldn't just read passages of books, and I couldn't read other people's articles on my podcast. So then somebody else said, well, maybe you could interview the authors directly. And I was like, well, I know like 2 authors, but I don't know. I mean, I guess I could start with them and just see. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh, this is perfect. I'll just use that title I was going to use for my book, and that'll be the name of my podcast. So I just like went into my bedroom. I literally like Googled easiest way to do a podcast from your phone. And I took my iPhone and I just like read that same essay that I mentioned into a podcast thing. And I did like a online little contest from some random website. I think a designer, I don't know if it was a man or a woman in Thailand, like made my logo.
Right.
And that was it. And I just started, and I didn't tell anybody. I mean, maybe I told my kids, but my now husband, but it wasn't like, I'm going to start a podcast. I just did it. And I was very quiet about it. And I started interviewing people. And then I realized that I loved it. So now here I am.
Yeah. So it sounded like when we're talking about what did it offer you that you really needed, and obviously I'm in a similar position. So it sounds like you had a real desire to get the messaging out to other moms about the fact that motherhood is no joke, that there are things that they're probably struggling with and they're not alone. Is that right?
That's 100% right. Yes. And I try to do that still. I mean, the essay that you mentioned about the fire burning out or whatever, I want to give moms hope. And, these times where I've been like crying on the bathroom floor and I write about it, I'm like, I know there are people all around the country right now who are crying on the bathroom floor.
Yes.
And I want them to read this so that they know that they're not alone. And like, I don't know, I've always just been able to like spill it on, writing wise.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to make people feel less alone, moms feel less alone, and give them hope.
Yes. It's funny you say that about the crying bit, because I just wrote a piece that is about when I was pregnant with my daughter. I was in the hospital for 2 months before she was born because we weren't sure if we were going to like make it through that. And so it's like a mini lockdown quarantine. So there were some things I learned about trauma going through that experience, about how we try to outwit it when we're in it. And we think, oh, if I just do these things, I won't walk away with trauma, but then we always do. So I was likening it to right now, how some of us are trying to do that now, and we can't know what weird habits we'll have later, or agreements and things. So anyway, I mentioned there's a part in the essay that I mentioned about how after a couple of years later, I realized what my trauma was from that whole experience. And it hit me so hard that I was like in the shower on all fours crying. So I wrote this thing. I actually submitted it to a bunch of places, and everyone was like, yeah, we are like inundated with pandemic stuff. So I kind of put it on my computer folder to die and was like, well, I guess there isn't a space for this. And then I couldn't stop thinking about it, because I find myself still trying to outwit the trauma of right now. And so I thought, I'm just going to put it on my blog. So I did, and I shared it. And I was so surprised. I got quite a few private messages from people that were like, especially about that crying bit, oh my God, I thought I was the only one that cried in the shower on all fours. And it was like, it's just so funny that you think you're talking to people about one thing, but there's sometimes a detail like that hits people, because you think you're the only one, because it feels like, how can this be my life that I cry in the shower? And then you look around, you're like, everybody's like, well, no, we do that too. And it's like, oh, okay, so maybe I'm not broken. Maybe this is just life.
Right. I mean, I think that's the thing that's different about the pandemic. When you're alone and going through like stay-at-home momdom and all that stuff, you're doing it on your own schedule and not in tandem with other people who, like, when I had kids, a lot of my friends were still out partying and doing whatever. And now everyone who's going through this has the same, like, you can say to anyone like, oh gosh, we had a lot of dark days in those 9 weeks. And everyone's like, oh, me too. Like, yes. Yeah, that was dark. And we all were in it together. And so it was okay to share it.
Yeah.
But I think the scatteredness of the timing of regular life traumas, there's not as many ways to bond over it or to admit it, because everybody else is seeming so together.
That's exactly right. And that's what I talk about at the end of the article, which is when after I had my daughter and we made it out alive, and I'd go out in the world and people would be like, oh, she's so cute. I would be like, no, you have to hear the entire story, because I've been to hell and back, and nobody knew, because why would anybody know? And then after like a couple months, I was like, I can't do this to people. But right now, exactly what you're saying is we're all there together. So it's like, we almost don't even have to say anything to each other about what's going on. And so I talked about too, how I had an end date. Like, I had a date that she was going to be born, and I was going to have my cesarean. And so I had a pink calendar that I would put X's on in the hospital, and we don't have the pink calendar right now. So it's like, there's some ways in which it was harder and some ways in which it's easier, but you're absolutely right that we're all going through this together. We will all understand, and we will all have a collective trauma. Now, is that like, that sounds awful, but also there is something less isolating about that.
Yes. That's true.
But shifting gears a little bit, I want to talk to you about your podcast interviews. So you've interviewed some great authors. Oh my gosh. So can you tell me about some of your favorite interviews and why they were your favorite? Or maybe there's some interviews that surprised you. What stands out for you?
One of my recent favorites was with Alicia Keys, which was like, I was so nervous. And I made her, I asked her like right when she got on the phone, because my daughters were freaking out. I was like, is there any way you could just say hello to them at the beginning? And she was like, sure. And they were so nervous too. And they were just like, hi. But she was like so cool and down to earth. And like you, it was like talking to someone like where you just immediately understand each other's experiences, even though obviously her experience in life has been so different as a major celebrity. But that was one of my most interesting because it just like was so encouraging to know that she was as real as she seems, or at least in this conversation, I should say.
Yes.
Because I remember like watching the Grammys and being like, oh my God, like she handled this stuff with Kobe Bryant so well. And like this woman would totally be a friend of mine. And then she'd like talked like that. So that was one really fun experience.
I loved listening to that episode. I thought it was so good. And I was struck by the same thing you were, which is, I'm like, it's like, what magazine is that says celebrities, they're just like us, and it's like them on the street buying. Yeah. And so it was exactly like that, where it's like, this is a mom just trying to get through the day. And she was so sweet, but also there were some things she talked about that really resonated for me about the creative process, that I was like, oh my God, no shit, that I'm not alone on the way that this process happens or doesn't happen, or all the pieces. She was talking about all the layers that go into the process. Oh, and then the one part that I love that she talked about is every time that she goes to write a song, she asks her, it's like she forgets, like, what do I do again? How do I start this process? And that, I remember where I was driving in my car when I heard her say that, because I was like, I thought that was just me that forgot how to do everything and had to reinvent the wheel each time. So anyway, that was a great interview. Sorry, I cut you off.
No, I'm glad. It's nice to hear what you had to say about it. To be honest, I have found that like really across the board, everyone who sits down to start something new is like plagued by insecurity. And it doesn't matter how successful they've been. They can be like a multiple best-selling author sitting down for their 40th book. And they still are like, gosh, I hope I can do it this time.
Yeah.
There's something sort of elusive about the creative process and creating something that it's hard to pin down people's taste, right?
Yes.
I have a friend who's who owns a vineyard and produces wine, and he and his wife were talking about how they take their wine to different stores and they have to sit there while people take a sip and they're like, ugh, or whatever, and how it's so similar to writing because it's people's taste. It's just, do they like it or not? And you can work on it for years and you can think it's brilliant and amazing. And then it's just not their taste and there's nothing you can do.
Yeah. I'm so glad as authors, we don't have to sit with people while they read our books or our articles to hear them go like, oh, that sucked, or, oh, this book.
Yeah. I don't think there would be any writers left. That would be the end.
No, I think so. Yes. Well, were there any nuggets of wisdom from any of the authors on your podcast that have stuck with you? Is there something someone said that really affected or changed you, like something you will never forget?
So I interviewed a woman named Ingrid Fattel Lee who wrote a book called Joyful about how you can change your environment to make yourself more joyful and give yourself basically a happier life through changing things around you. And I had always sort of believed that happiness was something that came from inside, right? You had to work on yourself or work on your issues or whatever. But it turns out that there's all this research that just something as simple as changing a paint color or painting your fingernails like in a rainbow colors, or little tiny changes in shapes that you surround yourself by, and having more circles and having unexpected elements and all these things, although it seems intuitive, makes a huge difference. And so since that interview, I try to incorporate, so many of the lessons that she taught me in her book and in our conversation and in my daily life. And I really think about it basically every day. So like right next to me right now, I have this like, because having a lot of circles around is one of the things. So I have this like circle that looks kind of like a sun that a girlfriend gave me once. And I have it right here up on my desk because it's like bright and colorful. And I know that circles make you happy. And then I have like color coded bookshelves behind me because like pops of color make you happy. And I don't know, I think about it for when I was actually getting my nails done, which I haven't done. And I don't know if I'll ever do again, but I was doing that like she did. I had like every color, every nail a different color. And every time I would look down, it would make me smile and change my mood just subtly enough that whatever I was stressing about seemed a little bit more manageable. So that was one of my favorite books and lessons in terms of a sort of change your life mentality type of perspective.
Wow. I think I need to get that book. That sounds amazing. With like just even your first little like beginning about what it was about, I'm like over here kind of jaw dropped, like, oh my God, there's these things that you can do that actually like you have control over this. Huh. That sounds
Yes,
amazing.
I know. It's amazing. It's amazing. Yeah. Just even feeling that there's a solution out there that's pretty
Yeah.
simple and not expensive and, easy to implement. So yeah, I liked
Yeah.
that too.
What about your interview with Anne Lamott? Are you a fan of hers? Were you nervous about interviewing her? What was that like for you? She's one of my favorites, is why I asked.
I am a huge fan of hers. Yes, I was so excited about that interview. And I only had like 20 minutes. It was on one of her, sometimes publishers have these like I'm sure you know this, but interview days where like they schedule them back to back for 20-minute increments. And in general, I don't like to do those because the poor authors, like by the time they talk to you, they've said the same thing 50 times and whatever. But yeah, it was on one of those days and it was great. She ended up like talking to me about like online dating and like all sorts of random stuff. So yeah, it was not what I expected. It was really fun. And yeah, she's like a legend. So it was, I got such a thrill to talk to her.
I love her
great.
quirkiness and her self-loathing. I love her self-loathing so much. Like in her book, Bird by Bird, which is, it's like my number one favorite writing book. I just love all the ways that she describes how writers hate themselves.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Yeah. So I think I saw on one of your pages or a couple of your pages that you got a book deal. Is that right?
It is right.
Oh, congrats.
Thank you. Yes, I have a 2-book deal for a children's book series with Penguin Random House about a character named Princess Charming.
Okay, so tell me more about it.
I can't say much more than that.
Okay.
But it's under a new imprint called Flamingo, run by an editor who's amazing named Margaret Anastas. A writer who had been on my podcast introduced me to. And it was funny the way it came about. She had a picture that an illustrator had drawn of a character. And she said, her name is Princess Charming. And this is what she looks like. If you were going to write a children's book, what would it be about? She's like, would you be interested in that? And I was like, oh, sure. And then 2 minutes later, I was like, okay, here's what I would do. And she was like, that's brilliant. Done. And then I just did it. She like,
oh my gosh.
I know. It was really crazy. I mean, I've been like toiling away at all these different books for years. And like this one was like a total fluke and ends up selling. It's so crazy the way the world works, but I'll take it. It's such a gift. So.
Well, awesome. We can't wait I can't wait to hear about it and to see it on shelves. When is your possible release date or month or year?
Not for a while. It's probably like September of 2022 or something crazy, 2021 or 2022.
And is that because of the pandemic, because everything is shoved off, or is that because the process takes so long, or both?
They don't even have an illustrator yet, so it's going to be a little while.
Yeah, got it. So with all of this and all the things that you do, how do you find balance with all of this and kids, especially right now? Or maybe I should rephrase that. How do you grasp at straws like the rest of us to find this elusive thing called balance that doesn't actually exist?
Oh man, I just try to do my best every day, but every day is something totally new. I mean, I try when so I'm divorced and remarried. I don't have my kids every other weekend. So when I don't have them, I try to cram in as much. My poor husband now, I'm like, see ya, But I try to cram in as much prep time these weekends as I can while still, hanging out with him and trying to take a little time to sleep and all the rest. I get up really early. I don't mean to. I'm not one of these people who like sets her alarm or anything. I would never do that. I like cherish every moment of sleep I can find. But lately I've just been waking up. Like if a kid comes in at 4:30 and is like, I need water, and they go back to bed, like that's it. I'm up. So I try to wait until there's some light in the sky to get out of bed. But by 4:30, if I'm in one of these moods, like I'm up and I can get like 2.5 hours of work done. And then in the morning, sometimes they get iPads or something. So I can get a solid like chunk of stuff done without losing too much time while they're here.
Okay.
I don't know. I try, it's so funny. I do have like a lot on my plate at the moment, and my husband keeps being like, you should hire an assistant or somebody to help you with all this scheduling and all this stuff. And I'm like, I can't have anyone help me with scheduling because I have all these weird rules in my head. Like, if I have this, then I definitely need like at least 30 minutes so I can come out and hang out with the kids. And oh, wait, that's too close to lunchtime. And well, that's too close to bath time. And wait, maybe I could do that while they watch TV at 7:30 at night, but will I be too tired? And I have like all these weird, rules. Like, I'm sure you can relate. So I'm like, yeah, assistant. No, I don't think so.
Yeah, well, that would be more work to try to tell them your schedule every day. It would be like you have one more thing to do rather than less to do.
Yeah. So I don't know. I'm not good at sort of offloading work. I'm also just like very, very aware of every moment. Like, what am I using this moment for? So if it's not like really intentional, like I won't just be like lounge. I never just like lounge about. Like I'll either say to myself like, okay, now is my time. I'm going to be totally present with the kids. I'm going to put my phone down here for like, I can't go that long, 20 minutes or something.
Okay.
But for these 20 minutes, like I'm going outside and I'm jumping on the trampoline and like I'm paying full attention. And then I can like be like, okay, now I'm going to check email for 10 minutes. And now I'm going to bake with the kids. But as soon as it's in the oven, I'm back and now I'm going to do a podcast. So I'm just constantly like, am I using my time right? Not in like a stressful way that makes me sound crazy, but what am I using this moment for? And am I wasting it? Like, is this now the best time to read the newspaper? Like, so I'm just always like analyzing.
Were you born on January 4th? I feel like we have a similar brain. I'm like a formulator. I'm a formulator, like somebody who's always trying to find, like you're talking about. And I think when we become moms, all of a sudden your brain shifts because everything becomes a strategy. And you go, okay, so I have the kids with me right now, so I shouldn't do X, Y, and Z because I would rather do those alone. But things I can do right now with the kids are these things. So it's like constantly trying to figure out how you can maximize your output.
Yes, totally.
Yeah,
totally.
It's kind of crazy making.
Can I do this with a kid on my lap? Right? Like, yes, this I can do. Like, can this kid help me perhaps? Like,
yes.
What can I integrate with them? What do I really need to focus on? Do I have to wait till they're asleep to do this?
Yes.
Yeah, all of that mental calculus.
Yeah. Do you ever get exhausted by the mental calculus?
Yes. Yes, all the time. But now I'm just so used to it. I mean, my twins are 13. I don't know. I just feel like I've been doing this for so long.
Yes.
But yeah, sometimes, I mean, to be honest with you, the last time the kids went to their dad's house, we had house guests here for the weekend who had been in quarantine themselves. So I felt like very low risk having them here, good friends of my husband's. And we had this like big lunch and it was really fun and festive. And then it took me like an hour, well, all of us an hour to like clean the whole thing up. And I just got like really exhausted after. And I had a quick work call that I had to say goodbye to somebody who had been working with me. And that was really sad. And I was like, you know what? I have to just like go put some sweatpants on and get out of this dress and just like regroup for the night. And everyone's talking about, okay, what movie are we going to watch tonight? That'll be so fun. It's starting to rain. So I went upstairs and I fell asleep and it was 6:15.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
And I slept straight until 6:30 the next morning. So yes, occasionally I just crash.
Right. Your body's like, well, she's not going to stop. Good Lord. And she won't give us meth. So we have to do something. We must lay down. We must force her to sleep. I love that your body just totally revolted against you. That's amazing.
Totally. Yeah. I was annoyed, but yes, it happened.
Yes.
And, yeah, I came down the next morning and they're like, yeah, we all had dinner and we watched a movie and like they did all this stuff. They were up till midnight. I was like, oh my God, I'd already had like a full night's sleep by then.
You could have regamed. You could have, had your nap, come down, gone for a second round.
I could have.
So we have kids of similar ages. And I know we've talked about this before, that you have 13-year-old twins, right? And then you also have youngers, like 5-ish. What are your ages?
Yes. I have boy-girl twins who are 13. I have a 7-year-old daughter and a 5.5-year-old son.
Okay. So what is your experience of having the two different realms, like the vaping and sex realm, and then also the crayons and Shopkins realm? Like, what is that like for you?
It keeps it interesting. Mm-hmm. It keeps it really interesting. Sometimes I'm literally like, I can't believe I'm going from this conversation to that conversation. And it's like so ridiculous that I like stop to marvel at it.
Right.
You know what I mean? I'm like, this is like a joke that this is happening and that I have to deal with these two things at the same time. Honestly, like having had twins and having like double the same stuff all the time, having such a wide range is really nice. I mean, obviously I still have twins, but
yes,
I don't know, all the different experiences is a nice addition. You know, right now, to be candid, like this is hard to plan when my older kids need completely different things than my little kids, even in terms of like where should we live and things like that. So yeah, it's a challenge. What do you think?
Totally. Yeah, I find that there's some benefits of it. And I don't know about you, but I waited a long time because I just had to have sanity and sleep. I hadn't slept in years and I couldn't imagine doing it any sooner and trying to juggle all of it. So that was a necessity for me, but it's been really, one of the things that's been really nice is that it made it so that we had this life with my son and he got a lot of attention. And then now we have our daughter and it's like, he can help out. He's not still young that he was as needy as toddlers can be when he had a sibling that came along. So I've really loved that aspect of it, kind of having it be separate, and that felt special to me, even though I know it's special no matter how you do it. But going to somewhere like Disneyland together is we have to split up for everything. So there's, you know, my son and my husband, like they would go ride the bigger rides and then my daughter and I would ride the smaller rides. And so it's similar like that with movies. It's hard for us to find a movie that really, I mean, my son's so sweet, like he'll kind of watch whatever for her, but also there are movies that we want to watch with him. Like, I mean, the other day we watched Billy Madison, which I don't know that I look on IMDb. There's that parents guide. Do you use that at all?
No, I didn't even know about that.
Yes. Okay. So the Internet Movie Database, imdb.com.
No, I know about IMDb,
yes, okay.
But I didn't know they had a parents guide.
Yeah. So if you look on there under whatever movie, if you scroll down, it'll say like cast and crew, and then it says parental guide, something like that. And you can go in and it tells you all the different things you might encounter, and it kind of gives you a rating. So I had looked at Billy Madison and was like, okay, there's a couple things in here that I know are problematic. I couldn't totally remember them. So then we watched it and my daughter was there too. And there were definitely things I had to fast forward through that were not appropriate. So I maybe would have let my son watch those things and then had a conversation with him about why those things are problematic now. But so that's the hard thing is there's like The Office. My son and I love watching The Office, but I don't really love for my daughter to watch it. So it makes it so that things are more separate than if their ages were closer together. But I think I might have lost my mind if they were closer together. So I think this is my best case scenario for sure.
Yeah, I do feel like I've like struck gold when there's a movie that the entire family can watch. That's the best.
What can you think of any? Can you remember?
I know.
Any?
I was like, I was trying to think of what our most recent one was. We watched, this is like so random and now I can't remember the name. It was like Harrison Ford was in it and it was about a dog and it came out at the beginning of the pandemic and he was like up in the mountains. Oh my God. It was really good and we all got really into it. Like it was good for every age, including me. Like, what was it called? Oh, Call of the Wild. The Call of the Wild.
That's based off of the book probably, right? From Jack London? Yeah. Okay, good to know. So that does it for everybody. Have you watched the new Jumanji movies?
I get scared by those.
So the new ones are funny. So they have this element of them that's kind of silly and funny that isn't quite as seriously scary that my 6-year-old and my 13-year-old loved. One of the last things I wanted to ask you about is I wanted to talk to you a little bit about letting go of perfectionism during this time. And I guess I'm just assuming you're a perfectionist or maybe you're a recovering perfectionist like me, because I feel like we're similar on so many different angles. But what has the pandemic taught you about not having everything have to be just so? And even with your podcast, what are some things before the pandemic that you would never allow to happen that had to be a certain way, but now during this time, you have to ease up on?
You assumed correctly. I am a perfectionist. I guess I could say recovering perfectionist, but I'm not sure about that. Oh my God, so many things. I mean, so many things from like the laundry to like my drawers used to be really organized. My kids' drawers, the shelves, like everything. It gives me anxiety to have a mess.
Yeah.
And now
yes.
even my daughter, like I don't even bother cleaning her drawers. I don't even make her clean her drawers. I don't clean up my drawers. Like as long as I can't see it, I have to like, weed through the pile. And I know that sounds so silly and so small, but like I
No.
think of it every time I get dressed or changed, which is quite often. So yeah. So little things like that to big things. I mean, I have let go a lot of what they even do all day. I mean, I'm here, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't sound right, but like,
No,
I don't
get
know.
it.
I used to be like crazy about technology, only 30 minutes a day or a 26-minute show. And that's like a joke at this point.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, I'm like 30 minutes not of technology a day is hard enough.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
And with the podcast, I used to read every word of every book. And I've increased the frequency so much that it's like almost humanly impossible for me to do that anymore. I've learned how to like speed read essentially, and I can skim a book, but I don't sit down and spend like 6 hours on a book. Now I can only spend like 2 to 3 hours on a book. And I admit it, like I'll tell an author like, oh my gosh, I didn't get to read the end or something.
Right.
But that's something that before I was like, no, this is non-negotiable. I have to read every page. So I just can't. Everyone has their limits. So
yes.
I don't know. Some nights the kids don't want to take a shower. I'm like, all right, okay. I mean,
yeah.
I don't know. I'm just like, we're all going to wear the same clothes like all the time. And I'm okay with that. Eating, I'm like, I used to be really focused. Now I sound like a terrible mom, but like
No.
I used to like the meals had to be like balanced and this. And now I'm like, forget about setting the table. If it comes in a box, that's even better. We're going to eat it on the table in the box, and then I don't have to do the dishes.
That's exactly right. No, Zibby, you're talking about, I think so many people can relate to this. I know I can. I have all these same rules that completely went out the window. And in a way, it's sort of a gift. Like I look at for podcast stuff, like I remember when you interviewed me, you said something like, I don't remember if it was the Instagram thing or on your podcast, but you said like, I'm so sorry. I normally have a list of questions and I've gone through stuff, but I'm showing up here in this, it sort of is what it is. And I loved that because I think this time requires us to not have all these rules for ourselves, whether it's for our podcast, whether it's for our work, or whether it's for kids or whatever it is for ourselves and our laundry and our chores and whatever. I so appreciated that because some of these rules that we have on how, for us perfectionists specifically, like aren't necessary. Even with my podcast, I would make sure that everything was super quiet. Like nobody could say a word. My kids would be downstairs and I still try. I mean, I'd rather have good audio if I can, but I've just had to learn like these kids have nowhere to go. They aren't at school anymore. And so if people in the background hear my kid once in a while, that's totally okay. And I don't think people can expect that everything just works perfectly. So I think it's almost a gift to not do these things. Like even on my website, I have transcripts of every episode that always went up when the episode went up. And now it just says episode transcript coming soon. And I get to it maybe in a couple weeks after or whatever. But I'm like, why wasn't I working like this before? Because I could have been living the pandemic lifestyle, for the past year or more.
I could not agree more. I'm the same. And you're right. I used to prepare all my questions and send them ahead of time. And now I don't. And honestly, I don't think it's any worse. Like,
yeah, right.
And that would take me like an hour. So, and I still like really enjoy my conversations. And yeah, I mean, some of the things I just didn't need to do. And to be honest, like I'm way more relaxed now. And I think that my kids can tell. I mean, we have a lot of fun at dinner. We laugh and like it's fun over those pizza boxes. And before it might have looked a lot nicer, but
yes,
the formality maybe, not that it was so formal, with
yeah, right. No, I get
napkins. But, placemats occasionally. But now it's just really fun. And I think they can tell that I'm just so, at least about certain things, I'm much more laid back. And I think that's kind of benefited all of us. So now it's just a question of like, I don't want to go back to normal life. And now what do I do?
That's exactly right. That's a total good point. Is I keep thinking, well, first of all, I'm like, we're not returning to normal life anytime soon because we as a people and as a country cannot get our shit together. But I keep thinking when things start to eke that way back to normal, what things do I no longer want to do that I did before? And I really want to be conscious about it because there are some really beautiful things during this time, and I want to hold on to those. And I'm hoping that life doesn't just pick back up and we all blindly like, oh, back to the thing that felt normal. I really hope we can keep some of these things.
Me too. Me too. I mean, this is like what I lay in bed worrying about. It's like, how am I going to keep this going? Because I don't want to go back to the way I was living before. I don't want to. But what if it's required of me? What if the expectations are that all of a sudden, I mean, I know it'll be a while before like events happen again. And
right.
I mean, I used to love hosting events, but I don't know. I just can't. I don't even want to go to New York. I don't know. I'm sort of in a crisis moment.
Yeah,
so we'll see what happens. But
I'm totally with you on that crisis moment, and I'm also wondering, like, what things do I really love doing, and what things do I not? Because there's lots of things that we just do, and you think that. I mean, it sounds kind of dramatic, but it's almost like this midlife crisis of like, who am I?
Yep.
Like, who I was before this, was that really who I am?
Right.
Or was I on a hamster wheel and I couldn't get off? And so I thought that's who I was. But now that I have time to just breathe and not be doing those things, like who will I be going forward, and what will be different? And I don't know about you, but for me, it's been a really uncomfortable experience. Like I think a lot of really big like catharsis and change is. But I've had moments, I feel like I'm on a roller coaster. I have moments where I'm like, I've learned so much about myself and I have clarity. And then other moments where I'm like, this feels so uncomfortable and I want to go back to how it was. And it's like on a day-to-day basis, it changes.
Mm-hmm. I'm worried.
Yeah, I know. I think the thing that keeps me up to is thinking about how different our kids' lives are going to be from here on out. And that, and I was talking to a friend about this last night, how they're going to be sitting on therapy couches in years going, everything was so good. I had it made. I had friends. Life was normal. And then one day the rug got pulled out from under us. And I'm just so curious how it affects our kids going forward and how it changes the trajectory of what they get into in life and their choices. That's a bigger conversation.
Yeah, that's true too. Although I think it affects different ages so differently. I mean, I think my little kids, I think it was really nice. I mean, we spend so much time together. That's like what they want at that age, you know?
Totally.
And I think my daughter really, like my older daughter in particular, it was all about friends, you know? And this is a really hard time for a 13-year-old girl.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, but you're right. I mean, the long-term effects, I'll be really interested to hear. I mean, I keep saying like, of all the times in my life, maybe I'll write this book. Like, what if COVID had happened when I was like in the middle of dating that guy? Or like, what if it had happened in the middle of my divorce before anything had been settled? What if it had happened in college? Or, you know what I mean? Just like, I just feel so lucky that it's now for me. And I know that it's not for other people. And my heart goes out to them.
Oh, absolutely.
And I feel like that's why I try to use this time to help people as much as I can. Like, whether it's, you know, friends and family or, you know, other authors or whatever I can do, because I feel like I'm okay. Like I'm settled, I'm married, I'm in a boring, great life. I don't need anything outside of my home anymore. I really don't. So.
No, I hear you on that. And shout out to all the listeners out there who are in the middle of a divorce and couldn't finalize it in a pandemic and are living with your soon-to-be ex, but cannot get away. My gosh.
Oh my gosh.
If there's anybody out there who's living that and who wants to come on the podcast and tell us all about it, please find me, contact me, because I sometimes will sit and think about that. Like, what would that really be like? So anyway, putting a call out for that. So Zibby, where can people find you and your podcast, Moms Don't Have Time to Read?
So it's called Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books, and it's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere you find podcasts. My website is zibbyowens.com, ZIBBYOWENS, although I'm about to redo the whole website. But anyway, still go there. And I'm really active on Instagram at Zibby Owens, and I also have an account at Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books, and I'm on Twitter and Facebook, but I'm personally pretty obsessed with my at Zibby Owens account, and I'm on it all the time and like DMing people and all the rest. So that's the best place to find me.
I don't know why I had it down as Moms Don't Have Time to Read and I left off the books, because I feel like
That's fine. Everybody, a lot of people do that. It's a long name. No worries.
See, you know what? I'm proving it because moms don't have time to read far enough to see that the word books is in the title. So it actually is perfect. Zibby, thank you so much for being here and for being such an ally to authors, specifically mom authors who, as I talked about at length on your podcast and was unsure if I shared too much about it, we aren't always treated with the utmost care and respect in the publishing industry and the entertainment industry. I know there's a bias against moms, specifically stay-at-home moms a lot of the time. So I just appreciate you being a safe place for us. And I know you have such a busy meth-propelled, not really, schedule. So thank you so much for finding the time to chat with me here today. I really am so glad that we've connected. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Thank you for this great conversation. I feel like I just had coffee with a good friend. So it was totally filled my bucket,
Yes.
So thank you. It's so nice to meet someone and talk to someone who totally gets my crazy frame of mind.
Yeah, I feel like we share it.
It's nice to have a commiserator in this. It's nice to be understood.
For those of you who don't already follow Zibby, she's been through a lot in the past few months. She and her husband lost both his grandmother and mother to COVID-19. Two healthy, vibrant women they were super close to, and Zibby wrote about the experiences with such vulnerability and beauty. And yes, it's as heartbreaking as you would imagine. So I hope everyone's hanging in there as we round the corner on 2020 and the election. If you enjoy the podcast, chances are you'll love my novel, especially right now while you might need some validation, humor, and a wild trip to Vegas if only in your mind. It's called, you guessed it, Adult Conversation. It's a darkly comedic novel about the relentlessness of modern motherhood, where the main character seeks an answer to the question, is motherhood broken or am I? After a series of mom wins and failures, she and her therapist end up on a Thelma and Louise-style road trip to Vegas, where they are tempted and tested while finding lost pieces of themselves that motherhood swallowed up. You can find it in all the usual places, or you can go to my website, adultconversation.com, to find out more. As always, thanks for listening.
Here I am back at the goddamn Zoom.